He held up my contract like it was a piece of garbage, then fed it into that portable shredder piece by piece, never breaking eye contact. 23 years of my life, reduced to confetti while the board watched like it was some kind of twisted show. "Your services are no longer required, Michael," he said with that practiced CEO smile. That's when I knew Nicholas Warner had just screwed himself big time. "My name is Michael Thompson. I'm 49 years old, and I spent over 2 decades building the technology that turned a struggling startup into a $350 million company." What Nicholas didn't know, what none of them knew, was that destroying that paper contract had just triggered the most expensive legal bomb in corporate history. But let me back up and tell you how this whole mess started. 23 years ago, I walked into a cramped office above a check-cashing place, and the whole company was 4 guys with mismatched chairs and a coffee maker that sounded like it was about to die. The AC unit wheezed every time someone used the microwave, and the carpet smelled like decades of spilled coffee and broken dreams. But I had ideas that actually worked, and back then, that meant something. I was 26, fresh out of grad school with a mechanical engineering degree and more student loans than sense. My girlfriend Jennifer thought I was crazy for taking a job at some no-name startup instead of going to Boeing like my classmates. "Michael," she said, "at least the big companies have health insurance." But something about that little company felt right. Maybe it was desperation, maybe it was stupidity, but I saw potential where others saw chaos. I built my first prototype in that dump with parts from eBay and a soldering iron that shocked me every 3rd time I used it. Took me 6 months working nights and weekends, but it worked. That ugly little box became patent number 1. Then came 2 and 3, and before I knew it, I was filing patents faster than the company could figure out what to do with them. Jennifer and I got married in year 4. Simple ceremony, nothing fancy because we were both still paying off school loans. But by then, I was making decent money, and the company was starting to look like it might actually survive. We bought a little house in the suburbs, nothing special, but it was ours. Jennifer started her financial planning business, and we talked about kids someday. By year 10, we weren't a startup anymore. 3 floors downtown, an espresso machine that cost more than my first car, HR policies thicker than a phone book. The licensing deals started small but grew fast. Defense contractors, manufacturing companies, tech firms from Silicon Valley sending teams to every demo I hosted. My adaptive process flow system alone brought in $180 million worth of new contracts. The trade magazines called it revolutionary. I just called it doing my job. That's when Sarah came along. Jennifer was 35, I was 38, and we'd been trying a couple years. When Sarah finally arrived, she was perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes, and lungs that could wake the neighbors 3 blocks away. I remember holding her in the hospital, thinking about what kind of world I was building for her. I wanted it to be a place where hard work and good ideas still mattered. I wasn't the flashy type, didn't do interviews or remember to shave every day. But I was the backbone of that company, and everyone knew it. You could see it in the quiet looks during earnings calls and how the lawyers kept my contract locked down tight when bigger companies came sniffing around with buyout offers. Because here's what they never tell you in business school. Without real innovation, you're just burning investor money until someone figures out you're running on fumes. Jennifer always warned me about the politics side of corporate life. "You're so focused on the engineering, you miss all the people games," she'd say over dinner while Sarah colored at the kitchen table. "You trust too much, Michael. Not everyone plays fair." She was right, but I figured good work spoke for itself. I was building something that mattered, something that would last. Sarah grew up around my workshop in the garage. Even as a little kid, she'd sit on my workbench while I tinkered with prototypes, asking a million questions about how things worked. By high school, she was helping me debug code. When she told us she wanted to study engineering like her dad, I nearly burst with pride. Jennifer rolled her eyes and said, "Great, now I'll have 2 engineers who forget to eat dinner." The company kept growing. We went from 4 people to 40 to 400. I watched new faces come and go, trained dozens of young engineers, saw my little inventions get built into products that shipped all over the world. 22 patents with my name on them, all filed with the company holding conditional licensing rights. That detail about conditional licensing, that was going to matter more than anyone realized. By the time Sarah graduated with her engineering degree last spring, I was basically the CTO of a mid-sized tech firm with clients from Detroit to Germany. Not bad for a guy who started out in an office that smelled like burnt coffee and broken promises. Jennifer had built her financial planning practice into something solid. Sarah was starting her career with better opportunities than I ever had, and I was looking forward to maybe slowing down a bit in a few years. That's when Nicholas Warner showed up and decided to blow up everything I'd spent 23 years building. Looking back, I should have seen the warning signs. But when you've been swimming in the same pond for over 2 decades, you sometimes forget that sharks can show up when you least expect them. Nicholas Warner stepped off that private elevator like he owned not just the building but the air inside it. Shoes polished like black mirrors, suit that probably cost more than most people's car payments, and that practiced smile that made you feel like you needed a shower afterward. "Call me Nicholas," he said during the all-hands meeting, like we were going to be buddies who grabbed beers after work. The board had brought him in as the new CEO to streamline innovation and enhance scalability. I'd heard that corporate speak before. It usually meant make things cheaper and faster so we can flip this company to some hedge fund. Nicholas was 34, had a background in sales and marketing, and his resume was full of buzzwords like disruptive thinking and agile methodologies. The kind of guy who'd trademark the phrase innovation catalyst and put it on his business cards. But I gave him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe I was getting too comfortable after 23 years. Maybe fresh eyes would see opportunities I'd missed. Jennifer wasn't so optimistic when I told her about the management change over dinner. "What's his background in engineering?" she asked, cutting Sarah's chicken while our daughter told us about her first week at her new job. "Sales, mostly," I admitted, "but he's got an MBA from Wharton." Jennifer and Sarah exchanged a look. "Dad," Sarah said, "you know what they taught us in business school about guys like that, right? They come in, cut costs, pump up the numbers for a couple years, then sell to the highest bidder." "Not everyone's out to destroy what we've built," I said, but even as I said it, I wasn't entirely convinced. First week, Nicholas took the grand tour, nodded like a bobblehead at everything we showed him, asked strange questions that made no sense. When I demonstrated the adaptive process flow system that had landed us those big contracts, he interrupted halfway through. "Can we make this more viral?" he asked. "Like, more shareable across platforms?" I laughed, thinking he was joking. This was a manufacturing control system, not a TikTok video, but his expression didn't change. He was serious. "It's industrial automation, Nicholas," I explained. "It optimizes production lines." Right, he said, making notes on his tablet. "But what's the user engagement angle? How do we gamify the experience?" I looked at my team. A couple of the younger engineers were nodding along like this made perfect sense. The older guys just stared at their shoes. Week 2, I started noticing things. Meetings appeared on calendars without my name on them. Strategy syncs, innovation workshops, future-forward planning sessions. When I asked to join, I got polite deflections. "Not essential this time, Michael, but we'll loop you in on the outcomes." The outcomes never got looped back to me. Then my lab budget got cut. Not eliminated, just sliced in half with no warning. I found out when my procurement requests started getting rejected. The explanation was a single-line item on a spreadsheet. Budget reallocation for digital transformation initiatives. I went to my direct report, Lisa Martinez, except according to the new org chart that nobody had bothered to show me, she wasn't my direct report anymore. The chart had me floating in some gray area labeled Senior Technical Advisor, which sounded important but meant exactly nothing. Lisa looked uncomfortable when I asked about it. "It came from Nicholas," she said, not meeting my eyes. "He said it was temporary while they restructured things. Did anyone mention that the prototype for Patent 23 needs that budget to finish trials?" She just stared at her coffee cup like it might have answers. I'll bring it up in the next sync." By month's end, 2 of my best engineers had been temporarily reassigned to Nicholas's new innovation pod. I found out when I came to work and their desks were empty, nameplates gone, like they'd never existed. The innovation pod was run by some kid fresh out of Stanford who used the phrase design thinking in every sentence and had never built anything more complex than a smartphone app. That's when I started documenting everything, not angrily, just methodically. Every meeting I got excluded from, every budget cut, every decision made without consulting the guy who'd built the technology they were betting the company on. Jennifer, being a financial planner, had taught me to keep good records. Paper trails don't lie, she always said. I wasn't panicking yet, just paying attention. Like that moment before a thunderstorm, when the air goes still and you can smell the rain coming. The real kicker came during the quarterly review. I'd submitted my usual detailed progress report, complete with technical specs, market analysis, and projected timelines. Instead of using any of it, Nicholas clicked through slides full of stock photos and corporate buzzwords. My patent 21, the adaptive flow system that had brought in $180 million in contracts, got rebranded as Next Phase Optimization 2.0 with Nicholas's smiling face on the title slide like he'd invented it between Zoom calls. I sat in the back row, jaw clenched, watching him take credit for work I'd sweated over for months. The worst part wasn't even the theft. It was how easily the board bought into it. They didn't care who had actually built the engine, just that the car kept moving and Nicholas looked good behind the wheel. One of my old engineers, Dave Martinez, slipped me a sticky note after the meeting. "This place doesn't deserve you." I folded it up and kept it in my wallet next to a photo of Sarah on graduation day. But here's what Nicholas didn't know about me. Here's what none of them understood. I'd been thinking about corporate vulnerability since year 5, back when we almost lost a major contract over IP ownership questions. That's when I hired William Phillips. William looked like a retired boxer who'd traded his gloves for law books. Bald head, thick hands, always smelled like mint gum and fresh printer paper. But the man was surgical when it came to contract law. We started meeting once a week at Mel's Diner on 5th Street, same booth by the window working. Through every clause in my employment agreement like we were defusing a bomb. "You trust these people now," William said over hash browns and black coffee, "but companies change. Ownership changes. Priorities change. You need insurance." So we wrote my real contract. Not the one HR had on file, but a bulletproof version with one clause buried on page 11 that would make corporate lawyers wake up in cold sweats, IP reversion in event of breach. If they fired me clean, following all procedures, they kept the patents. But if they breached the contract terms in any way at all, everything I'd invented reverted back to me. All 22 patents, all licensing rights, all derivative technologies. We filed it through blockchain timestamping, immutable and uneditable, stored on 3 different servers and 1 offline backup in William's fireproof safe. The company's legal team never read it carefully. They just saw employment agreement and filed it away. Over the years, as the company grew and systems changed, they pushed updated contracts and digital onboarding processes, but I never signed anything new. My original agreement stood like a sleeping giant, and legal always backed down when I politely declined their updates. Even as Nicholas started his little power games, I stayed quiet. Let him think I was just another old-timer too, set in my ways to adapt. Let him believe I'd go gentle into that good night. He had no idea I was 2 moves ahead with a legal weapon that could destroy everything he was trying to build. By month 3, I was a ghost in my own company. I'd walk past conference rooms and see Nicholas pitching my technology to investor groups, laughing and gesturing like he was Steve Jobs unveiling the next iPhone. Meanwhile, I was barely invited to meetings about my own inventions. The final insult came when they announced the Innovation Excellence Awards at the company retreat. 3 categories: breakthrough technology, process improvement, and future vision. Guess whose adaptive flow system won breakthrough technology? And guess whose name wasn't mentioned anywhere in the acceptance speech? Nicholas stood up there in his perfect suit, holding the crystal trophy, talking about revolutionary thinking and paradigm shifts while I sat at a table in the back, picking at rubber chicken and wondering how I'd become invisible in the place I'd helped build from nothing. Sarah called me that night after she saw the company newsletter online. "Dad, are you okay? They didn't even mention you." "I'm fine, sweetheart," I told her. But Jennifer gave me a look across the kitchen that said I wasn't fooling anyone. "This is getting ridiculous, Michael," Jennifer said after I hung up. "You need to talk to someone, HR, legal, somebody, and say what? That the new boss doesn't like me? That's not illegal, but taking credit for your work is." I almost laughed. "Prove it." He never said he invented anything. He just positioned himself as the visionary leader who made it all possible. That's the genius of guys like Nicholas. They never actually lie. They just arrange the truth in ways that make them look better. But I wasn't worried. Not yet. Because while Nicholas was busy playing corporate theater, I was still the guy who actually understood how everything worked. The patents were still filed with my name as inventor. The licensing agreement still required my technical certification. The whole operation still depended on systems that only I fully understood, or so I thought. Things escalated fast after that retreat. Nicholas started talking about workforce optimization and right-sizing for maximum efficiency. Corporate speak for layoffs, though he never used that word. He brought in consultants from some management firm that specialized in organizational transformation. These consultants spent weeks interviewing people, analyzing workflows, creating charts that looked important but didn't actually mean anything. They had meetings about meetings, presentations about presentations, and somehow managed to bill 200 hours a week without producing anything useful. But they did produce one thing: a report recommending the elimination of redundant senior positions and legacy thinking that impedes innovation velocity. Translation: get rid of the old guys. I wasn't the only target. 3 other department heads, all over 45, all with decades of experience, suddenly found themselves labeled as change-resistant and not aligned with future-focused initiatives. Jennifer saw it coming before I did. "They're building a case," she said one evening while helping Sarah move into her first apartment. "All this documentation, all these performance reviews that suddenly appeared after 20 years of excellent ratings, they're covering themselves legally. For what? For firing you without cause and keeping your patents." That night, I called William Phillips. We met at Mel's Diner the next morning, same booth, same hash browns. But this time, the conversation was different. "They're going to make their move soon," I told him. "I can feel it." William stirred sugar into his coffee and nodded. "Good thing we prepared for this 15 years ago." The axe fell on a Tuesday. Nicholas scheduled an emergency board meeting, called it strategic realignment. I should have known something was up when they moved it to the big conference room, the one with the polished walnut table and floor-to-ceiling windows that made everything feel like a stage. The board was already there when I arrived, half of them checking their phones, the other half pretending to read quarterly reports. Marcus Stone, our biggest investor, looked uncomfortable. Rebecca Walsh, who'd been on the board since the early days, wouldn't meet my eyes. Nicholas stood at the head of the table like he was hosting his own TV show. Behind him was a portable paper shredder, plugged into the wall outlet, humming quietly. At the time, I thought, it was for confidential documents. "Before we discuss Q3 projections," Nicholas announced, "there's some legacy housekeeping we need to address." He reached into his briefcase and pulled out what looked like my original employment contract. I recognized the coffee stain on the bottom corner from when I'd signed it 23 years ago, sitting in that crappy office above the check-cashing place. "This," he said, holding it up like evidence in a murder trial, "represents everything that's wrong with old-school thinking." Some of the board members shifted in their chairs. This wasn't normal business procedure, and they knew it. "Michael, you've had a good run," Nicholas continued, his voice dripping with fake sympathy. "But let's be honest. Technology moves fast these days. We need fresh energy, new perspectives, people who understand today's pace instead of someone coasting on yesterday's ideas." Then he did it. Fed my contract into that shredder page by page, never breaking eye contact. The machine chewed through 23 years of my professional life while the room sat in stunned silence. "We appreciate your legacy contributions," he added, using air quotes like he was talking about a retirement party for a janitor. "But moving forward, your services are no longer required." The room went dead quiet except for the sound of my heartbeat hammering in my ears. A couple of board members looked sick. One of them, Tom Bradley, someone I'd worked with on several major contracts, stared at the table like he was trying to disappear into it. I didn't move, didn't speak, just sat there and let Nicholas finish his little performance. When the last piece of paper disappeared into the shredder, I nodded once, slow and deliberate. "Noted," I said. That was it. One word. Then I stood up, straightened my jacket, and walked out of that room while the shredder kept humming behind Nicholas, who had just made the most expensive mistake of his corporate life. Because what Nicholas didn't know, what none of those board members realized, was that the paper he'd just destroyed was meaningless. A copy of a copy, filed away in some HR database 23 years ago. The real contract, the one with William Phillips's bulletproof language and that beautiful IP reversion clause, lived somewhere else entirely. I drove straight to William's office, called him from the parking lot. "It's time," I said when he answered. "How do you want to play this?" he asked. "By the book. Every step documented. No shortcuts, no mistakes." "Good," William said, "because we're about to teach Nicholas Warner the most expensive lesson of his career." That afternoon, while Nicholas was probably celebrating with champagne and congratulating himself on cleaning house, William filed the breach notice with federal time stamping. We didn't send it to Nicholas first. We sent it directly to the company's outside legal counsel, those fancy lawyers who charge $100-200 an hour and know exactly what a properly written IP reversion clause can do to a company's valuation. Their response came back in less than 6 hours. Not angry, not dismissive, nervous. The lawyers wanted a meeting, not Nicholas, not the board, but Griffin Marks from Steinberg, Walsh and Associates, the kind of firm that handles lawsuits big enough to move stock prices. His voice on the phone was clipped, professional, and deeply concerned. "Mr. Thompson, I've reviewed the documentation your counsel provided. We need to discuss this matter immediately. William and I met them downtown in one of those glass tower conference rooms where every surface reflects money and power." Griffin looked like he hadn't slept in days. The company's in-house legal team sat around the table like they were attending their own funeral. "The IP reversion clause appears to be enforceable," Griffin admitted, sliding a thick folder across the table. "Our preliminary analysis suggests that all 22 patents would indeed revert to you under the breach conditions." William didn't smile, just nodded. "That's correct. This wasn't disclosed during our representation setup," Griffin continued, and I could hear the accusation in his voice. Someone had screwed up badly, and it wasn't us. Over the next 3 days, while the company's legal team scrambled to find a way out of the mess Nicholas had created, the business side started falling apart. Production systems that ran on my software modules began failing when they tried to bypass my authorization codes. I held the only keys, and every lockout cost them thousands of dollars per hour. Then came the licensing audits. Our biggest client in Germany sent an email requesting ongoing certification from the original patent holder, me, to continue manufacturing products that used my technology. The email came directly to my personal address, not the company. I didn't respond. 3 more clients sent similar requests, all to me personally. Meanwhile, my phone started ringing. Word travels fast in the engineering world, and apparently, the story of Nicholas shredding my contract in front of the board had leaked. First call came from Thompson Industries, a manufacturing rival I hadn't talked to in years. "Michael, heard you might be available for some consulting work. We've got a project that could use your expertise." Then Blackstone Engineering called. Then a startup in Seattle backed by some serious venture capital money. The offer from Seattle was particularly interesting. Chief Technology Officer position, equity package, and they were very interested in my patent portfolio if it became available. I let the offers pile up while the company hemorrhaged money trying to untangle itself from technology they thought they owned, but legally didn't. Jennifer was having the time of her life watching it all unfold. 23 years of you being too nice to play corporate politics, she said, and now you're accidentally the most ruthlessly strategic player in the game. Sarah called every day for updates. "Dad, my friends at work can't believe this is actually happening. You're like a legend now." By the end of the week, the company issued a temporary operational pause on 3 production lines. Their stock price dropped 12%. The German client canceled their Q4 order worth $80 million. Internal Slack messages started reaching me through former colleagues. Does this mean we don't actually own the technology? And is Michael really taking back all the patents? That's when Nicholas finally broke. He called my cell phone directly, not through lawyers or HR intermediaries. He sounded different from the polished CEO I'd watched destroy my contract. Tired, maybe a little desperate. "Michael, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Can we talk?" "Sure," I said. "Have your lawyers call William Phillips. I was hoping we could handle this directly." Professional to professional, I almost laughed. "Nicholas, you publicly fired me by feeding my contract into a paper shredder. There's nothing professional left between us." The formal settlement offer came the next Monday. $4.2 million up front, plus 18% royalties on all products using my patents, renewable every 5 years. They wanted exclusive licensing rights, and they wanted them immediately to stop the bleeding. William and I met at Mel's Diner one last time to go over the terms. Same booth, same hash browns, but this time we were reviewing documents that would set me up for life. "They're desperate," William said. "We could probably push for more." "This is enough," I told him. "I never wanted to destroy the company. I just wanted them to respect what I'd built." We scheduled the signing for the next Friday. I didn't wear a suit. Dark jeans, work boots, button-down shirt that still faintly smelled like the workshop in my garage. If they wanted to see the guy they'd tried to throw away, they could see exactly who that was. The same boardroom, same walnut table, but everything felt different now. Nicholas sat at the far end, arms folded, looking like he hadn't slept properly in weeks. The board members who'd watched him shred my contract now avoided eye contact. I placed 2 documents on the table, the licensing agreement and a statement declining the exclusive rights clause. "You can license the technology under these terms," I said, "or I can accept one of the offers I've received from your competitors." It took them 18 minutes of private discussion. When they came back, a junior associate handed me the signed agreement with a wire transfer confirmation attached. $4.2 million, same-day deposit. That afternoon, I drove north to the lake property the settlement had bought me. Nothing fancy, just a quiet cabin with a dock that stretched over calm water. I sat on the deck with a beer, watching the sun set, and called Jennifer. "How does it feel?" she asked. "Different," I said. For 23 years, I woke up working for someone else's vision. Tomorrow, I work for mine. Sarah FaceTimed me later that evening. "So what's next, Dad? Your mom and I are thinking about that consulting firm idea. Help small companies with their IP strategy. Maybe prevent other engineers from ending up in situations like mine." And Nicholas still has his job, for now. But every product they launch, every client presentation, every board meeting from here forward has my signature on it. Literally. They're paying rent on technology that lives in my head. I leaned back in the deck chair, phone in one hand, cold beer in the other, watching stars reflect on the water. For the first time in decades, I wasn't reacting to someone else's timeline. No meetings to attend, no budgets to justify, no politics to navigate. Nicholas thought getting rid of the old guy would streamline his operation. Instead, he'd just made me the landlord of his entire technology stack. And every day they use my patents, which is every single day, they're writing me a check. Funny how corporate politics work out sometimes. The guy they threw away for being too old-fashioned just schooled them on the value of reading the fine print. Some lessons are expensive. This one cost them $4.2 million, plus ongoing royalties, plus the humiliation of knowing that their most important technology belongs to the engineer they publicly humiliated. Not bad for an old-timer who supposedly didn't understand today's business world. Turns out experience is worth something after all. In a world that worships youth and speed, they forgot that wisdom and patience are the deadliest weapons in any corporate war. Never underestimate the old guy in the corner office. He's not just surviving, he's been quietly sharpening the knife.